続いて、去年のフォーラムに引き続いてのご登壇となります。国連環境計画アジア太平洋地域事務所のデチェン・ツェリング所長より活動のご紹介をさせていただきます。ツェリング所長、お願いいたします。
Good afternoon and welcome to the UNEP Forum that's co-organized with the Japan Association for UNEP and the UN Environment Program. Vice Minister Takahashi, Ministry of Environment, Ambassador Suzuki, Assistant Minister, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Suzuki, Professor Suzuki, Chairman Board of Directors of the Japan Association for UN Environment Program, Mr. Oki, Senior Vice Rector, UN University. I have the pleasure to be here this afternoon, and I also have the pleasure to have attended the second UNEP Association, UNEP Forum in Japan. Today, I would like to take a few minutes to talk about environmental issues and solutions in Asia Pacific. If we start to look at the environment trends and issues in this region, we realize that this region is very significant to keep the world within planetary boundaries. We're looking at the intensive and extensive use of resources, unsustainable consumption production, and many of the issues are the driving forces behind environmental issues that we hear about today, whether it's climate change, it's headlines of news all around the world. And today I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about what UN Environment Program is working with. So if you look at the recent report, and this was recently launched by the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. And the headlines are, humans are driving 1 million species to extinction. So we really talk about really the impact of our actions. And if we start to look at the species, we're talking about affecting at least in terms of marine plastic pollution. And I'm very happy that Honorable Minister, Vice Minister Takahashi and Ambassador Suzuki talked about this issue. But marine plastic pollution, we're affecting 267 species, 86% of marine turtles, 44% of seabirds, 43% of marine mammals. And we're starting to look at the unsustainability in agriculture and in fishing. And we know that the way we're exploiting fish stock, by 2048, there might not be any exploitable fish stock. 2048 is not very far away. Most of us, I hope, will still be in the room in 2048. So we're looking at very narrow time frames. We're starting to look at habitat degradation, and we're looking at scales. And if I can talk about in our region, we're talking about in Southeast Asia a reduction of 12.9% of forest cover between 1990 and 2015. Marine litter, and if you look at marine litter, you start to look at the 300 million tons of plastic waste every year, and I believe that's equivalent to the weight of the entire human population. We're talking about it being present everywhere. We're talking about it in the Mariana Trench, and I believe a few days ago there was a plastic bag with a sweet wrapper found. So you're talking about it found in the deepest parts of the ocean. We know that microplastics are finding their way in fish, and while we eat fish, we know that we now have this in our own bodies. In UN Environment, we've started a very active campaign on clean seas, and the 2018 World Environment Day theme was on beat plastic pollution. And together with the support of many countries, including the government of Japan and Norway, there's a lot of work going towards trying to create consumer awareness. There's a lot of regional platforms in the development and adoption of sort of a framework, work plan on plastic marine litter. On March 4th, 2019, the government of Japan and with UN Environment and Ambassador Suzuki talked about this project, we talked about promoting countermeasures against marine plastic litter in Southeast Asia and India, and we looked at two large water bodies. We looked at the Ganges and the Mekong. We're also looking at places in Mumbai, in Agra, where the Taj Mahal is, and we're looking at, this is with the support of the government of Japan, on what we can do to actually try to resolve this. The government of India has taken tremendous political leadership in setting targets, and we're very happy both the government of Norway and government of Japan are working to support the government of India towards meeting this. In Osaka, Ambassador Suzuki and Vice Minister Takahashi mentioned that there will be a symposium on plastic waste problems that will be organized by the local government, Global Environment Foundation Center, with support from Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Environment. But this is something that the G20 will discuss. So it's extremely important that the efforts and the leadership of the government of Japan is being taken to countries like India, to Southeast Asia, but also in Japan that this is being discussed. Next. So we start to look at air pollution, and we have 4 million people dying prematurely every year due to exposure from outdoor and household air pollution. We're talking about health, and World Health Organization is looking at air pollution as a major issue for the World Health Organization to prioritize. In Bangkok, earlier this year, we had toxic haze over the city, and we had schools close. And when we start to look at the data, nothing had actually changed. There was a lot of measures taken by the Bangkok Metropolitan Authority, but what had changed was air pollution, and air was not moving. So now we're starting to look at the still air, a toxic haze over the city. So we're starting to look at air pollution that is in different cities across the region, and we're looking at a lot of efforts on mobility, on trying to control open burning of agricultural residue, but with air pollution and with the adverse impacts of climate change, we're going to need to work faster. So the science is telling us our efforts are not adequate. The statistics are amazing. 92% of people don't breathe clean air, and it costs the global economy $5 trillion every year in welfare costs. So this really is an issue of, it's an epidemic. So with the support of the government of Japan, we've been working with the Climate and Clean Air Coalition and UN Environment Program on an air pollution in Asia-Pacific science-based solutions. And this is the first comprehensive solution-oriented interdisciplinary scientific assessment. And why this is really important is it's also working to contributing to the World Health Organization's air quality guidelines. But what it does is it really gives you an opportunity to look in a city at the sources of emissions. It really tells us what are the measures that have worked, because there are many cities that have tackled successfully air pollution. So we're looking at the 25 clean air measures were categorized in 3. There were convention emission controls focusing on emissions that could lead to formation of fine particulate matter. There were other air quality measures, not yet major components of clean air policies, many parts of our region, and they're measures that contribute to development priority goals with benefit for air quality. So when we start to look at why should we implement these 25 measures, we're looking at 1/3 of a degree Celsius by 2050. So this could be a significant contribution to the Paris Agreement and to keeping global temperature rise well below 2 degrees. I'm very happy that tomorrow I will be launching the Japanese version of this report, and I hope you will all take this report and you will read this report. So when we start to look at the numbers we're talking about, the 25 simple, cost-effective measures can be implemented. So this year, the World Environment Day, June 5th, will look at the theme for air quality. And we have a Breathe Life campaign, which was started in 2017. And the whole Breathe Life campaign is cities, is communities, is to mobilize them to commit to join this campaign to reduce the impact of air pollution on our health. And the campaign provides a platform. You can share best practices. You can share progress. There is a space for individuals. There's a space for municipalities. And the idea is we want to demand new and innovative solutions. All across the world, we're now hearing the biggest advocates for air quality are mothers, because mothers are worried and fathers are worried about the health of their children. Next. So when we start to look at measures, there's already a lot of positive measures. If we look at how we address fine particulates, how countries are looking at mobility, how we're looking at reducing emissions of diesel soot by 30%. And we're looking, in Japan, there are many sustainable cities, and Japan has very important lessons that can be shared across. I mean, Tokyo has been addressing exhaust gas from diesel vehicles with early supply of low sulfur diesels. They're promoting installation of particulate matter reduction devices. And I believe the compliance in Tokyo from 2004 has gone from 11% to 97% compliance. So the active participation of private sectors really sought in finding solutions for clean air. Next. We already heard a little bit about the Green Fins. And again, the Green Fins is an initiative, and we talked a little bit about my acting executive director, Ms. Joyce Masuya, talked a little bit about this. And this is something in Okinawa, in Ona Village, and you will hear a little bit about it. And really the idea is we're getting private sector collaboration in the dive industry. So the UN Environment Programme and Reef World, we evolve environmental standards for scuba, snorkeling, and businesses. So we really have something that the tourism industry, there's a standard, and this is being introduced by the private sector. The Japan National Coral Reef Action Plan also refers to it. So I think there is opportunities that we can take sort of international standards and bring it home, and we try to look at bringing green practices in scuba diving and snorkeling. If we start to look at mercury, UN Environment is Secretariat of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, and we know the whole methyl mercury poisoning, the Minamata disease case in the 1950s in Japan, and it really triggered research on mercury impact on human health and the environment. And we've had over 20 years of discussion, and this is culminated in the convention in 2017. Here again, if we start to look at mercury, and if we start to look at mercury poisoning, the support from the government of Japan was instrumental in getting a legal agreement. And we start to look at the numbers. If you look at mercury emissions in 2015, 49% was in East and Southeast Asia, 18% in South America, 16% in Sub-Saharan Africa. And if you look at it, most of it, 38% is artisanal small-scale gold mining. Our International Environmental Technology Center in Osaka has a waste mercury project, and this is the kind of significant contributions that the Japanese government has made to the global community. I will not say much about the Third Forum of Ministers and Environment Authorities of Asia Pacific because there has been reference to it. Next. And I will not talk about the UN Environment Assembly because you've already heard about it. But basically, the UN Environment Assembly is all the governments of the world coming together to take stock, to review the global environment, and is for us to take decisions on the global environment. But if I may say a few words on the Global Environment Outlook 6, and this is sort of the scientific assessment that is done under UN Environment Programme. And just to give you 3 figures, we know that current projection of energy use will go up 50 to 60% between now and 2050. But for us to meet the Paris Agreement, 80% of the energy mix of fossil fuels must decrease. We know we're going to need 50% of food to feed a growing population of 10 billion people. But we know that the current mitigation, greenhouse gas mitigation for energy, you look at water use, you look at chemicals, you look at land degradation, we have to produce food differently. We have to look at food loss, food waste. And if we start to look at the waste increase by 2050, we know that we have to find a new way to deal with waste. The old model of take, make, waste is no longer sustainable. By 2050, we have to come to a zero waste society for a healthy planet, healthy people. And if we don't do this, there is no trajectory. We cannot stay within the planetary boundaries. Please look at Global Environment Outlook 6. So at the end of the day, we're striving for a better place to live in. There is no plan B. There is no other planet. We're looking at how do we live economically, socially, environmentally for present generations and for those to come. And when we look at what science is telling us, complexity, interlinkages between the drivers of development, we see immediately the task is too big. It cannot be small non-governmental organizations, small ministries of environment. It's going to need each and every one of us. It's going to need every sector. And here the appeal really is to the private sector in Japan and to partners in Japan. We're going to need your strong involvement. And if we look at how we reach the 2030 agenda, what is a fundamental condition is the engagement of every sector and the engagement of private sector. Thank you very much for an opportunity to talk to you today, and thank you for coming to the UNEP Forum. Thank you.
邦子ちゃんね、今ね、ずっとお話を聞くと、とにかくいろんな課題があるんだけど、UNEP はその指針をね、こう示すんだけど、実際にそれを実行していくのはやっぱり我々であったり国であったり、とにかく各国、それから自分自身がですね、きちっとその認識を持って進んでいかないと何にも始まらないということですね。